Vinnie Politan, thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And Alex Murdaugh, very complicated character, trying to figure out who he is. You know, when I think of characters and trying to figure out who could Alex Murdaugh be like, I think of a couple of fictional characters. First, I think of Walter White from Breaking Bad. Remember him? Mild-mannered teacher. And what made him so fascinating to those who watch that show was the fact that here you have a guy, he's just a science teacher, but somehow can transform into this drug kingpin at some point. And that contrast of lives, that double life of, on the one hand, just a teacher, on the other hand, this notorious drug, guy who's making meth, but then rises in the drug world. And you know, for many people, that was kind of like, wow, that could never happen in real life, could it? Then you think about the next series that I got addicted to, which was Ozark, and you think of Matty Bird, you know, the nerdy accountant who also got involved in this world of drugs, first by laundering money and then getting more and more involved in some of the seedier parts of that life and that lifestyle. And you watch that and you say, wow, great series, but come on, maybe it's a little far-fetched. You know, could someone be this nerdy accountant and end up in that world? And then you think about Alex Murdaugh. Who is this guy? Is he just a country lawyer, right? You know, kind of was born into a family of lawyers and just, you know, was out there filing lawsuits and going to court and, you know, making money as a plaintiff's attorney? Or is he someone else? You know, who exactly is this guy? And I think that is really what the story is about, and ultimately what will come out inside the courtroom as prosecutors attempt to prosecute him for a lot of crimes, including the murders of his wife and his son. Now, for those of you who don't know this very layered and complicated backstory, Chanley Painter has put it all together for us tonight.
Richard Alex Murdaugh, if that is your name, please raise your right hand. Do you waive reading of the indictments?
Yes, sir.
13 months after the deaths of his wife Maggie and son Paul, 64-year-old Alex Murdaugh stood handcuffed inside the Colleton County Courthouse and was formally arraigned on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a deadly weapon in the commission of a violent crime.
What say you, Richard Alex Murdaugh? Are you guilty or not guilty of the felonies wherein you stand indicted?
Not guilty.
How shall you be tried?
By God and my country.
Richard Alex Murdaugh was born and raised in South Carolina's Low Country. He met his wife Maggie at the University of South Carolina, where she was a member of Kappa Delta sorority. They married in 1993. The next year, Alex graduated from law school. In 1996, Maggie gave birth to their first son, Buster. Paul was born 3 years later. Photos on Maggie's Facebook page show that Paul was an avid hunter and outdoorsman. It was Monday, June 7, 2021, when Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were found brutally shot behind this outbuilding on this sprawling 1,700-acre Murdaugh property. Alex Murdaugh told police he arrived after 9 p.m., found the bodies, and called 911.
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife and child got badly.
It was just after 10 p.m. when Alex Murdaugh made his 911 call. It was raining. It took first responders almost 20 minutes to arrive at the remote location.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Police documents show that less than a minute after the crime scene was secured, responding officers requested that the coroner be notified. According to the indictment, Maggie Murdaugh was shot with a rifle and Paul Murdaugh was killed with a shotgun. Alex Murdaugh is known to own both types of weapons.
Standing outside the front gate of the Murdaugh estate more than a year after the murders, the grounds are overgrown, but it's so peaceful and quiet here in this rural area, standing in stark contrast to the chaos of June 7th, 2021.
A two-lane road runs by the Murdaugh property on Moselle Road. The area around it, woods and low-lying wetlands. The shooting deaths of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh threw a spotlight on the rural counties that make up the 14th Judicial Circuit in South Carolina's Low Country, where the Murdaugh name is well known.
Everybody knows the Murdaughs. You know, it's a household name that's been here forever.
For 87 consecutive years, 3 generations of Murdaughs served as the solicitor, which, like a district attorney, is the area's top prosecutor. But Alec broke with the family tradition and stayed in private practice instead of pursuing a career of public service.
When you have a family that is so powerful and has so much influence, it's easy to go off the rails a little bit.
Alex Murdaugh reportedly gave investigators an ironclad alibi, saying that he was here at his parents' home in Barnville, South Carolina, around the time of the murders, less than 13 miles from the crime scene.
He was with his father, who has dementia, about 20 minutes. Yeah, he was with her about 20 minutes from Moselle.
Okay, so he has an alibi, but his alibi witness, I don't think, would be able to testify.
Murdaugh's defense team is asking for a speedy trial and say that Alec had nothing to do with the deaths of his wife and son.
And again, trying to answer that question, who is this guy? If you look at some of the charges outside of the murder charges, they paint an interesting picture for this country lawyer. He's been indicted along with Curtis Edward Smith, also known, I guess, as Cousin Eddie, right? This one is for criminal conspiracy and talking really about money laundering here, talking about checks in the value of $2,413,754, checks that he's passing through Cousin Eddie and back and forth. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of checks. Where's that money coming from? Where's it going? Then there's another one, count 9, for the manufacture, distribution, and possession of narcotics. All right? So money laundering, narcotics. What exactly is he doing down there? Who is this guy? Let's bring in our guests. Joining me tonight in New York City, reporter for the New York Post, Dana Kennedy is with us, and in Port Royal, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney, longtime acquaintance of Alex Murdaugh, Jared Newman is back with us. Dana, from New York, from the Post, but you spent some time down in the Low Country. Let's talk about that trip down there and what you found out. Tell us a little bit. You go down there, you're trying to figure out who this guy Alex Murdaugh is. What did you find out? Who did you run into down in the Low Country?
Well, I first went down a week after the murders in June 2021, and I really was sort of the archetypal Yankee fish out of water. I've since been back 3 more times, and I went back last month. I interviewed, for instance, Cousin Eddie last September after the bond hearing. That was pretty interesting at his house. I didn't know how seriously Eddie would be in trouble about 9 months later. But this most recent trip, Vinny, was to go look into what you alluded to earlier. Is Alex Murdaugh, out of Breaking Bad, or is he out of Ozark? Is he really some kind of drug kingpin that's using the Low Country as his own little Branson, Missouri? I went down specifically to start talking to members of the Walterboro Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys are a Bloods-affiliated violent street gang in the city that's next door to Hampton County and Colleton County, next door to Route 95. 2 members, two cousins, let's say, of the Cowboys Cowboys gang were brought into court in August, right around the same time that Alex Murdaugh had a few more charges involving drugs and money levied against him. And the prosecutors were very vague, but they ultimately intimated that these two guys, these two so-called cousins to the Walterboro Cowboy gang members, were receiving money from Cousin Eddie downstream from Alex Murdaugh. Now, if that sounds vague, it really is. And I went down there and I met some of the Walterboro Cowboy gang members. Some of the biggest ones were sent to prison in 2017 on drug trafficking charges. But they told me that these two guys, Spencer Roberts and Jerry Rivers, were being railroaded. In fact, I went to Jerry Rivers' home. If you're following me, let me know. If I went to Jerry Rivers' home, one of the two guys who were arrested in August, sort of in connection with this Murdaugh alleged drug and money laundering pipeline. He was on his country porch with his ankle monitor. He said he had been railroaded. And members of the Walterboro Cowboys say they're trying to muddy the waters and maybe even be a little racist. He said, one of the guys said to me, look at some of these white corrupt sheriffs instead of us. And then the weirdest thing, Vinny, was while I was talking to a group of these gang members at one of their houses, another guy drove up, didn't seem too happy to see me. The rest of them were okay. He made me show identification at my car, and he wasn't friendly. He didn't look like he was trying to snow me with anything. But after he checked out my ID, he said, I don't know who you are and what you want, but Alex Murdaugh is running half the drugs in this county.
Wow. Jared, you're down there, and you've worked in law enforcement, now you're a criminal defense attorney. First of all, what do you think of Dana's trip going down there and speaking to some of these folks? It sounds like some dangerous characters.
Without question, good luck to you, Dana. That took some chutzpah. And it's interesting, you'll find people to talk, as Dana alluded to in 2017, kind of the head was cut off of the Cowboys in a criminal RICO and drug trafficking trials. But yeah, I mean, this is totally shocking to me. I have seen this happen before with at least two other lawyers I know, nowhere to this extent, where if you're not getting caught, being a criminal is kind of a fun, seductive, sexy life.
Yeah. So, Dana, and I'm trying to, we know the backstory of the family and everything, but basically, he's kind of like a country lawyer and has a practice. Did you get the vibe that he's involved in selling and potentially distributing drugs and laundering money versus being someone who's hooked on drugs? Because the hooked on drugs narrative is kind of what's been playing out in the courtroom to a certain extent, going to rehab, et cetera, et cetera. What did your investigation reveal to you?
Well, a year ago, I went down there for the bond hearing for Alex Murdaugh and Cousin Eddie. And that's when Murdaugh's attorney, Dick Harpootlian, who is no fool, he comes across as a buffoonish country lawyer. This guy is like as smart as they come, right? And he immediately presented Alex in court as this opioid addict of more than 20 years. And it was like, oh, really? It looked a little obvious, like he was immediately trying to set up the narrative that he was a drug addict. It was a little bit too quick and it was a little bit too easy. And it seemed odd to me, since I had been down there a few months before, going through the town of Hampton, talking to actual friends of his. Certainly nobody had any idea he was a drug addict. He drank, yeah, but people certainly didn't know or had any inkling that he was on something so serious for 20 years. It's kind of hard to hide a 20-year drug addiction. So if I had to guess, I would say he was less of a drug addict and more of an operator of some sort, even though I don't have any proof. But, I also talked to Cousin Eddie's former sister-in-law, and she worked at one of the banks where Cousin Eddie would come in and he'd bring in these checks that were made out to him from Alex Murdaugh. And she said they all noticed that he never put them in his account. He always got them out as cash. And again, it's sort of being the narrative kind of is, well, Cousin Eddie was then going to the gang members and giving them money, even though I don't even totally understand how that works, like where this was really going, what the end game was. But it looks to me, and the one more thing I want to say, Vinny, was there was another sort of speculation that Alex Murdaugh might be smuggling drugs, because South Carolina 40 years ago had a big thing called Operation Jackpot. Smuggling marijuana was a really big deal. And there have been news stories about the fact that a guy that used to have ties, he and his father years and years ago were arrested on charges of marijuana smuggling. Alec Murdaugh and this guy Barrett Bulwar have ties, and they also own a bunch of weird little properties off St. Helena Sound, where Operation Jackpot took place. And these tiny lots of land look like the kind of place, lookouts, you're going to bring a boat. But I actually went to St. Helena Sound and found a guy like 62 years old who knows Murdaugh, knows all the Operation Jackpot guys. He said, nobody's smuggling marijuana these days. He said, and other people echoed it, if Alec Murdaugh is involved in some sort of mini Breaking Bad or mini Ozark, it's got to be inland. It's not the coastal smuggling, even though everybody wants to think that because it's very cinematic.
Jared, what do you think is going on with Alec Murdaugh? Is there an addiction? Does he love money? What is it that is the motivator? Do you think perhaps, sometimes, lawyers get into contact with people who are criminals, right? Because sometimes lawyers represent them and sometimes they cross that line. Do you think it's possible that he may have crossed the line, or do you think he's someone that's an addict or someone who was just trying to launder some ill-gotten gains from somewhere else?
Well, knowing Alex since he was about 17 years old, I have never seen any evidence from him, whether it's in court, whether it's on the golf course, whether it's, at a bar function, a convention, a get-together at their property down in Beaufort on the little island. And I don't buy the Oxycontin story whatsoever. At the level that he functioned at as a good lawyer, you just can't function at that. And I will tell you, I have never seen Alex be grossly intoxicated at any time. Have a few beers or drink here and there and talk to the guys. But the addiction thing, I'm not buying. That, to me, sounds like a spin to make him a victim. And what you said, sometimes lawyers, and I've seen this, get too close to their clients. You start going to the strip clubs with them. You start hanging out, throwing $20 bills. I'm not saying this happened here. But it's, as I said, being a criminal, if you're not getting caught, can be a fun, exciting, seductive lifestyle.
All right, our guest, Jared Newman, Dana Kennedy, staying with us. We're going to talk more about what's happening down in the Low Country, plus coming up next hour. In Waukesha, Wisconsin, the accused Christmas parade killer, Darrell Brooks, in court representing himself, crying in court today, and cross-examining his ex-girlfriend on her birthday. We are live in Waukesha with the latest.
First of all, good morning.
Good morning.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
A woman is literally cooking breakfast for her kids, opens the front door, and is shot to death by a clown. People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
One little bizarre incident and story after another.
It was rumored that Sheila Keene and Michael Bourne were having an affair.
She killed my daughter, and he marries her.
Unbelievable. A Clown at the Door, Sunday night, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
So anyway, when they said on here, whoever said it, apparently they went and got a search warrant and took that phone that they gave me in rehab and my iPad.
Don't you have to be presented with a search warrant?
Buster, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what the law is on that, but...
I mean, is that a violation of your Fourth Amendment?
I think at some point they got to serve a copy, but maybe they're giving it to Jim and Dick. I don't know. It doesn't matter because
Well, I think it does matter, man. I don't think it's. I mean, something's got to give. I mean, I understand that you've done illegal, but that doesn't mean you can just, turn a cold shoulder to the laws of the United States.
I've allegedly done illegal stuff. I'm kidding. Anyway.
I think he knows they're being recorded, right? So he's got to throw in the allegedly, right? Unbelievable. That's Alec Murdaugh speaking with his son. That's before he's charged with the double murder, by the way. Back with us, Jared Newman, criminal defense attorney, lives down there, has known Alec Murdaugh since he was 17. Dana Kennedy, New York Post reporter, who spent a lot of time down in the Low Country digging this up. Where is he financially, Dana? And And where did all the money come from? Is it clear that it came from his law practice and from some of these settlements where the clients didn't necessarily get the money, but he did?
Yeah, he's certainly accused of doing some major swindling of clients. Supposedly, the family going back 4 generations in the Low Country in that law firm and also as solicitors had to have, I would imagine, built up quite a family nest egg as well. But I've never really understood that, because most sort of rich legal dynasties don't have to go out and, deal with gang members and sort of their redneck cousins to make money. So it's really hard to say. I felt too that a lot of the financial charges, Vinny, it's a little bit, they never got Al Capone on murder. They always got him, sent him away on financial fraud, but never for the really bad stuff. And that my impression of many impressions in this case is they're trying to overload him with financial stuff. So the case is so incredibly confusing, you almost forget about the murders. I mean, everyone's sort of forgotten about Maggie at this point. Whoever talks about her.
Jared, let me ask you about Alex Murdaugh and the family and the money. Is this like trust fund money, or is it just you have a successful business that gets, passed down from generation to generation? Were they big landowners? What exactly, how would you describe their wealth?
Well, they certainly had various assets, probably in all 5 of the counties of the circuit. They have an island just behind Kalawasi Island. They own the entire island.
Wait.
Huge.
They own an island?
Yes.
Okay, that's impressive. I mean, I don't know too many people who own an island. So, and for Alex Murdaugh, when you hear these allegations of stealing settlements and, suing yourself when your housekeeper dies in your home and then never paying the family of the housekeeper, what would it be, Jared, from your perspective, that would motivate him to allegedly do this stuff if, the family owns islands and they've got the law practice and everything else going on? Why?
For kicks, maybe. As I said, it can be a seductive life. Exercising power over people can be seductive as well. You're in a position you can do favors for people. He certainly didn't need the money. As I said on your show one time before, I could look at the legitimate settlements he had after the last 10 years, and I could retire.
So, Dana, when you were down there, what was the feeling you got about what people think about Alex Murdaugh? And is he, and you came across someone who said he's running half the drugs in the county. Were these people scared of him? Was there
that
a fear?
That was one of the Walterboro gang members, and that's what took me really, kind of took me aback, because he was so definitive, and I think he would know, because these guys themselves, some of these gang members, I mean, they're known for running drugs. Jared obviously knows Alec, but when I first went down there, I've talked to so many people, and I have sources now all over the area who consider themselves really good friends with him. Now, you have to remember that it's really true. Everyone said to me, if you're a Yankee, they're not going to ever really tell you the truth. So I always remember that, and I really believe that's true. Even now, it sounds old-fashioned, but they do regard people from somewhere like New York as they're not going to really tell me exactly what's going on. It's like you're always working through the pluff mud of South Carolina when you try to figure this story out. But I think his friends, if I can believe some of them, are as baffled as Jared is. I mean, they seem to not have a clue. And I've talked to them a lot now. You'd think they'd crack a little bit. And yeah, I would be able to see that maybe they did know something was going on, but he was just a good old boy that they all liked.
So, Jared, what do you think this trial is going to look like? I mean, at this point, and then we're still, it seems like we're pushing towards this relatively speedy trial, potentially in January, early next year. What do you think it's going to look like? What is that scene going to be like, and how will it play? Because they'll likely not change venue, right? They'll probably have it right there.
Well, I mean, if I was Alex, I'd like to be tried in my own backyard. Certainly, I don't want a jury from somewhere else that doesn't know me to look at this. But, it's going to be a media frenzy, obviously. I predict grandstanding, and I maybe say it in a good way that trial lawyers do from both sides. But I'm interested to see, because we don't know, what is the evidence? Is this a three-way domestic that went bad? Was this a hit? As I've said before, it's difficult for me to believe one person shoots two different people with two different guns.
Yeah, that part of it doesn't make sense, and that's a tough fact for prosecutors or the solicitor. So Dana, what are your thoughts about the murders here? Is there anything that you came across that might explain why?
That's the $64,000 question, and there have been leaks that have come out in very recent months, indicating that there was perhaps video from Paul's cell phone, indicating on one hand they were all, he, Maggie, and Alec were all together chatting not too long before the murders took place. This is such a strange story to cover. I don't really know. I really, really don't know if he did it or not. And the two guns are crazy. And here's what somebody who used to work for SLED said to me. He could have, if Alec did, if anything happened and he didn't really mean to kill them, but he did, because Paul, the son, was such a known kind of bad seed. He got drunk, his alter ego was Timmy. If he had said, Paul was drunk and he had his gun at me and his mother, and he would have, they probably would have believed him. He would have sort of taken, responsibility for it. No one was there to be the wiser. And his son was the kind of person that you could have imagined might have caused that to happen, but he didn't go that route.
Right, and what you're saying is the son kills the mother, and then Alec is trying to protect, and he has to take out his son. That would explain two different guns and the scene. Wow.
Or it could have been his excuse. Say he did really kill them, but it would have been, for a lawyer, that's how your mind would think, I would assume. You come up with an idea like that. Then you'd be off the hook in a way.
We shall see. Wow, what a story. We're going to continue to cover it as we get closer and closer to that trial. Jared Newman, thank you so much. Great to see you. Dana Kennedy, unbelievable reporting. Next time you go down there, let me know. Maybe I'll send Jared to go be your bodyguard and help you out.